Hey guys, welcome back. I just watched the season finale of season 1 of the Halo TV show, and let's talk about it, I guess. Here we go, final episode. Yay! Really been looking forward to this one.
It's false. No way.
This episode was like, alright. Like, it wasn't amazing. It was decent by the show standards, but the show standards aren't good, so that's not like anything great, but it was definitely a more serviceable episode than most of the other ones. Starting out, I gotta say, the camera work in this first opening section when Chief is like waking up from the base on Reach being partially destroyed was really amateur looking. Like, it reminded me of like a fan movie or something, the way that it's kind of like phasing in and out. I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the pictures that I'm putting on screen, because obviously CBS love to copyright anything you put on screen with this show, so I can't put any footage on screen, but the way that it kind of like faded in and out and like blurred and unblurred just looked really amateur. It didn't look professionally done. I also don't understand why the Marines in the Reach base don't have like magnums or anything. Like when Maki takes this guy's pistol, it's just some generic like 5.7 looking thing that you could get in the modern day. Again, I've said this in other TV show episodes before, but like, I like the idea of modern day weapons in Halo, but sparingly so they contrast with the futuristic weaponry. I like the contrast they create, but this show seems to have an obsession with everyone having modern day weapons and there barely being any Halo weapons in it, which I find peculiar. One of the plot points of this episode was Halsey and her lab assistant Aiden trying to escape Reach and going rogue from the UNSC. And I'll be honest, the way that this plot thread concluded took me by genuine surprise, and I actually kind of liked it. So basically, she gets on a ship, takes off, but Kai jumps on the ship and destroys it, so it crashes, and Halsey supposedly escapes the ship in a life pod. However, it later turns out that the Halsey that escaped was in fact a Flash clone, and the real Halsey had managed to actually escape. And that is a plot twist that I genuinely didn't expect. It's the only plot twist in this entire show that I didn't expect, and I actually really enjoyed it, so props for that one. And then at the end, Halsey gets smuggled off Reach via the space tether on a ship. So I'm assuming in season 2, she's probably going to go to Madrigal and meet Quan, and she's going to try and get to the Halo through the portal on Madrigal that those weird mystics in the desert were controlling or whatever. I'm assuming that's how it's going to go. Who knows at this point. But the main plot point of this episode was relating to the Spartans, Silver Team, and Chief in particular. And I gotta say, one of the least favorite things for me about this show in season 1 has been how much they relied on that just really cliche and at this point tiring deconstructing the hero trope that almost every franchise nowadays that gets an adaptation seems to be going for. I really don't like how they take like a fan beloved hero character and just tear them down. Like, I don't find it interesting. I'm trying to think, the only real time I can think of where I actually think this is done right was Halo 4. The way that they humanized Chief in that, in contrast to Cortana, was really good. It doesn't work in this at all. The Spartans are badass super soldiers first, and then what comes after that is all the like personality and the fact they were abducted when they were kids and all that. First and foremost, they are badass super soldiers wearing badass armor. I don't know why we didn't start out with that and then like in season 4 or 5 or 6 feed into the, well actually there's a really dark history behind them. That would have been so much more interesting if you had that build up with the Spartans being these like almost robotic heroes that fight aliens and kill them in cool ways with cool weapons, wearing cool armor, but then you later find out that, oh, actually there's a really dark history there. The fact that we just started out with that dark history, it doesn't feel earned in any way. The reason this plot thread worked so well in Halo 4 was because we just had an entire trilogy of Chief fucking everything up in cool looking armor with cool looking weapons. So it was interesting to get a kind of different look at the character and get a peek behind the heroic visage of his visor. That visage was earned in the games by Halo 1, 2, and 3. It was not earned at all in the TV show because it was never there. Pretty much from the end of episode 1, Chief's just been an irrational, emotional teenager. It's actually unbelievable how little Chief in this show actually resembles Chief from the games or from the expanded universe, the books, or anything. At barely any point has he actually felt like Chief. Like some people have been saying, he feels more like Jimmy Rings or Master Cheeks than Chief. This character does not resemble Chief. Anyways, going back to the silly plot of this episode. Early on, when Marquis is escaping the Reach base with the Keystone artifact, that Chief, quite literally in his own words, tells Silver Team,
"Lose the artifact,
We lose the war.
When Silver Team go after her, Kai instead chooses to not go after Marquis and not go after that artifact, but rather she goes after Halsey, who at the time is escaping from Reach, purely because of her personal vendetta against her because that she abducted her as a kid and all that. That's so unbelievably out of character for a Spartan 2. A Spartan 2 would not prioritize a personal vendetta over quite literally saving humanity from the Covenant. If Marquis, or when Marquis gives the Covenant that artifact, they'll find Halo, they'll win the war. Again, in Chief's own words, and Kai chooses to not go after her, she goes after Halsey instead because of a personal vendetta. This is what I mean, dude. They're so caught up in this, like, deconstructing the hero trope with the writing that they just completely mischaracterize the Spartans. Something else that rings true for this entire episode and this entire show as well that Late Night pointed out in his video last week, and when he said that, I was suddenly like, oh my god, he's right. None of the dialogue in this show really, like, ever feels natural or organic in any way. It just sounds like a bunch of, like, trailer sound bites stitched together to try and form, like, a semi-coherent sentence. It just makes the characters sound so unbelievable and fake because the way that they talk in this show, no one talks like that in real life. They all just talk in trailer sound bites stitched together.
Chief?
What?
Remember him?
Well, shit.
However, with all that said, there were still a few things that I did enjoy about this episode. The honor guards looked really, really cool, and honestly, so did that kind of entire staging ground for the final battle on the planet that I'm assuming is Hesderos, I think it's Halo Cannon pointed that out in one of his videos a few weeks ago. Pretty sure this planet is meant to be the elite colony of Hesderos. Yeah, the staging ground looked really cool, so did the honor guards as well. Had a really cool vibe around it, this entire scene. And when Silver Team were traveling to this planet, the scene where they were in the Pelican and they were trying to navigate through, like, the edge of slip space, or I can't remember the exact terminology. It was like the edge of slip space or something. That entire scene in the Condor was really cool. I liked that. When the Condor almost got, in Cortana's words, spaghettified, the way the kind of reality started to warp and the screen started to bend was kind of cool. I felt like I'd taken shrooms or something, but I did enjoy that overall scene. And going back to the planet, seeing the Prophets conspiring behind Marquis' back to essentially just use her to find the rings and begin the Great Journey and then discard her like the rest of humanity was really cool. It was cool seeing the Prophets finally be those kind of conniving, conspiring characters that we know from Halo 2 and the expanded universe. The Brutes looked really, really good, especially this one with the Spiker. I love how they look. And Atriox looked really good as well. This is Atriox, by the way. Not that it really has any significance to the plot of the episode or the show so far, at least, but it's Atriox. I'm assuming that's so they can tie it in with Infinite. And also some of the sections with grunts in this were pretty funny and cool as well. They look pretty good. But I think overall, the combat VFX, I don't know if it's like the mocap or the animation or the VFX, I'm not entirely sure what it was, but there was just something about the way the characters moved and fought in this battle scene that was just kind of like, I don't know, it just seemed a bit cheap. It wasn't awful by any means, but it was kind of just like sci-fi tier in a way, which isn't great, and it's definitely not what I expect from Halo. I mean, it's been out for like 3 hours at this point, and I honestly think that it's already aged worse than Landfall and We Are ODST. I know I keep mentioning those, but those two are just like the absolute like bar that Halo live action needs to meet. And so far, nothing since either of those, besides maybe Hunt the Truth or Deliver Hope, have even got close. The combat in this show never feels anywhere near as visceral or as gritty as it did in We Are ODST or Landfall. It kind of just feels like any old, like, generic sci-fi show. The overall writing of this battle scene, though, was definitely the lowest point for me. It was just not good. Nothing really made much sense in the way the battle was structured. I mean, the Covenant warriors just threw themselves at the Spartans individually. Like, they didn't use any kind of tactics or strategy. Bear in mind, some of these Covenant warriors were literally elite zealots, right? Very, very high-ranking officers, and they just threw themselves at the Spartans. Almost like, I mean, they may as well have been zombies. This is like a scene out of The Walking Dead or 28 Days Later. The way the elite zealots, and I say zealots with very strong air quotes, ran at Silver Team in this scene really reminded me of that scene from the start of the first Alien vs. Predator, where the Predators are hunting the Xenomorphs on Earth, where they're still at the top of that, like, massive Aztec tower, and the Xenomorphs are clambering up it to try and get to them. Except you'd think that the Elite should look like the Predators in this scene, but they don't. They look more like the aliens, which is ironic considering the Elites were based on Predators. But yeah, the way it was structured and framed, and the way that the Elites behaved just seemed really silly to me. For a large chunk of this battle scene as well, the Spartans just stand out in the open with zero cover, just blind firing at the enemy without taking any hits whatsoever. Obviously, I know they're Spartans, but like, they're just stood still. It's not like they're getting shot and they're like dodging the shots like Matrix style whilst they're still returning fire. They're just kind of stood still out in the open whilst the Covenant fire God knows how many shots at them and miss. It just seems so cliche. But I'll tell you what, the worst thing about this battle scene, right? The absolute worst thing that made me laugh so much was the fact that for like 5 minutes, the Prophets were about 30 feet away from Silver Team in the same goddamn room with no cover, just floating above them, watching them kill the Covenant, and not once did any member of Silver Team even think to be like, you know what, maybe we should kill those guys that are floating up there in the gold thrones. No point did they think that. They could have beheaded the entire Covenant leadership right here with 3 Magnum shots. And they didn't. They just let them float there because poetic license, I guess. Can someone tell me why a Spartan hasn't killed these fucking Prophets yet? They're just stood there. The Prophets are just... Why are we not killing the Prophets? They're stood there. Kill them. Take out the entire fucking Covenant leadership right there with 3 shots. They're right there. What? You could have beheaded the entire Covenant right there with 3 bullets. You could say, well, maybe they didn't see them there, but come on, for Christ's sake, they're Spartans. They definitely would have known they were there. But hey, at least they actually used the Halo theme for like 15 seconds during this fight, which was decent, I guess. Another weird plot point in this was when Marquis touched the artifact to blow all the Covenant away and save Silver Team, Chief kind of just turned into like an automaton and walked towards it and just knelt down. Maybe it's the Blessed One. God bless. I don't care about the Blessed One thing. Oh man, maybe it's because they're both Blessed Ones or something, but then they get transported to another vision on the Halo, which we never actually went to in this. And Chief is in this vision and almost lets the entirety of Silver Team die just because he wants to spend some time with the Covenant spy that he's in love with. Oh my god, I can't believe I just said that sentence out loud. Oh, so silly, man. So silly. But hey, at least Kai shot Maki and took her out of the equation, right? Thank God. What I also find strange is that only at the final moment, when basically all of Silver Team are on death's door, does Cortana then think, maybe I should control the Condor and gun all these Covenant down. She waits until the very last minute when they're all almost dead to do that. She didn't think to do that at the start of the battle, or when all those zealots ran up the stairs. Nope, she waited to the last moment because... cinematic timing, I guess. Granted, there were some scenes with Riz that I did like in this scene. The bit where she gets stuck by that plasma grenade and Kai almost tries to like jump on her and sponge the explosion or something was really cool. And then later when they're on the Condor and Riz is like gravely injured and all of Silver Team are trying to treat her, I like that scene a lot. That reminded me of the Spartans, and actually it kind of reminded me of the scene from the end of Fall of Reach when Linda gets severely injured to the point where she has to be put into a cryo tube. Maybe they'll do the same kind of thing with Riz in Season 2, who knows, but this stuff with Riz I did like. But yeah, the episode ends with Chief recovering both Keystones, and the story's basically back to where it started, to be quite honest with you. Basically back to Episode 1. Humanity has the Keystones, the Covenant want the Keystones, the Halo was never found, we never went to it besides in visions, the Fall of Reach never happened. What was the point? What actually happened that has any like long-term substance or meaning in Season 1? All Season 1 seemed to accomplish was character assassinating Chief. The Covenant were barely a threat. Half the season was taken up by a cringy, angsty teenager subplot that no one was interested in. And the namesake of the series only appeared in those visions between Chief and his Covenant spy that he fell in love with that was also a human. Oh, dude. I'm gonna make a video, I think, probably this weekend, about, like, my overall thoughts on season 1 of this show. But I think, honestly, the best way to describe it is from the words of the Arsenal Gear AI from Metal Gear Solid 2. So take it away, Roy Campbell.
Not with a bang, but a whimper.
So yeah, concluding thoughts. The episode wasn't awful, but it wasn't good either, especially by Halo standards. And I just can't believe that after 9 years of waiting and $90 million spent, this is the Halo show that we ended up getting. This is the culmination of all that time and all those resources. And how many? 256 script rewrites? Maybe if you have to rewrite a script 256 times, there's an inherent problem with it. Just maybe. But hey, I guess we'll see how season 2 is. But yeah, that's it for this one. Let me know your thoughts on this episode down below in the comments. It wasn't as bad as episode 8, but like I said, it wasn't exactly great either. Yeah, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And with that said, I'm going to round this one out here. I want to give a massive thank you to all of my amazing patrons for their continued support over there, as per usual. And thank you all so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. And I'll catch you all in the next one.